After the meeting between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House went off track, all of Europe felt the tremors. It wasn't just about Ukraine. The entire continent was rocked by a missed opportunity and a heated discussion afterward. Because the meeting ended without any firm decisions, a wave of important questions now fills the air. How will Europe stand up to Moscow if the United States steps back? What will happen to the support for Kiev if America withdraws? Amid these uncertainties, Germany is urging the European Union and NATO to act quickly by declaring an emergency. German Foreign Minister Baerbock is calling for an immediate release of 3 billion euros to aid Ukraine. This decisive move, intended to put a stop to Vladimir Putin's aggressive plans, has become one of the main topics on the world's agenda. Let's dig deeper into Germany's urgent appeal. We will examine how the peace process between Ukraine and Russia is unfolding, what actions the sides are taking, and how Europe might manage in the wake of Germany's call. But first of all, do not forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and give us a like to stay informed about our content. Let's jump right in. Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock is urging officials to unfreeze a 3 billion euro aid package, a move sparked by rising tensions between Kiev and Washington. She insists that Germany must immediately renew its support for Ukraine. Next, Baerbock is calling for an EU meeting on March 6th so that leaders can approve a broad financial support plan for Kyiv. This plan would cover humanitarian relief, economic help, and military supplies. At a special gathering of European leaders in Brussels, officials are expected to announce fresh measures to assist Kiev while consulting with American allies inside and outside NATO. Their goal is to find ways to strengthen defense efforts so that the burden is shared fairly. Many believe that President Trump's criticism of the Ukrainian leader will force decision-makers to act hastily, even before their own security plans are fully ready. Baerbock has also appealed to Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and Poland to agree on sending long-range weapons to Ukraine. She is convinced that these steps are essential for Ukraine to keep resisting Russian advances, even if the United States reduces its aid. In her view, these measures will secure a fair peace rather than push Ukraine into surrender. She stressed that swift action is needed and that a new government should be formed as soon as possible to take charge of ongoing assistance. Until then, the current government must work hand in hand with all democratic forces. In addition, Baerbock proposed creating a European defense fund, arguing that investing in Europe's security means also strengthening Euro-Atlantic bonds. The minister pointed out that lasting peace for Ukraine is far more likely when it remains allied with Washington, rather than standing alone or even opposing the United States. She urged leaders to keep cool heads as they collaborate. At the same time, Baerbock warned that if we start calling the victim the aggressor and vice versa, it could shatter the international system that upholds global rules and security. Such a collapse would also harm the future of the United States by undermining confidence in the world's oldest democracy and its military strength. Baerbock noted that Europeans can no longer afford to believe that any nation can rest easy while ignoring the threat of Russian aggression. With concerns now at an all-time high, she reaffirmed Germany's commitment to support a free and independent Ukraine. Germany's pledge to help is already receiving positive feedback from the European Union. Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, expressed hope that leaders will soon agree on fresh funds to boost short-term military support for Ukraine, especially as Europe faces Russia's exclusion from talks aimed at ending its 3-year conflict with its neighbor. Callas mentioned that most ministers back the new military aid plan. According to the proposal, EU member states will commit to providing at least 1.5 million large-caliber artillery munitions, air defense systems, missiles for deep precision strikes, drones, and support for rebuilding military brigades as early as 2025. While the most recent draft does not set a specific total, an earlier version earmarked 6 billion euros. Each nation's share will be determined by its current gross national income, and countries can choose to contribute either through equipment or cash. The new plan suggests that this year, money sent to Ukraine by the group will come from funds freed by taking money from blocked Russian assets as part of the final deal. The next two payments are expected to add up to about 880 million euros. Kaja Kallas explained that the details of the military support for Ukraine still need careful discussion and proper time. But time is running out. She said she is working very hard to wrap up the aid package as quickly as she can. Kallas stressed that the new aid package must be ready soon so that the European Union can clearly warn Russia. She added that European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and all member countries will continue to join forces to make a decision on March 6th. Von der Leyen then announced a 3.5 billion euro financial help package to give Ukraine extra cash for its shaky budget. This package is meant to support various actions, including buying military gear made in Ukraine. The 3.5 billion euros is just an advance on a bigger fund of 50 billion euros known as the Ukraine Loan, set up by the European Union at the start of 2024. This larger fund was created to help stop Russian attacks in Ukraine. But there are other ideas to stop Russia too. One idea is to offer security promises, a request that Kiev has made many times. Many officials and experts in Ukraine and Europe have said that NATO should give Ukraine full membership right away, or at least promise it soon. Supporters of quick membership believe that the very idea of a war with NATO because of its security promises would make Russia think twice. However, some worry that making Ukraine a NATO member right now might spark a larger war with many risks that all NATO countries want to avoid. Some experts suggest solving these problems by giving security guarantees only to the parts of Ukraine controlled by its government. They call this the West German model. Some people in the Biden administration have even talked about expanding the existing membership promise, which was first made at NATO's Bucharest meeting in 2008, and then brought up again at meetings in Vilnius in 2023 and Washington in 2024. Other voices say that any promise should wait until the war is over, since all of Ukraine is now at risk from Russian missiles and drones. While these ideas are still being discussed, talk of Ukraine joining NATO seemed to fade by the end of 2024, perhaps even quieted by Trump's election for a while. If Ukraine doesn't join NATO, could there be other guarantees? 19 NATO members, including the United States, Japan, and the European Union, have already signed one-on-one security deals with Ukraine, promising military help for 10 years. But even though these deals promise to keep Ukraine's army strong and sometimes even list specific weapons, they are not binding treaties. Even if they were, they might not be enough to ensure the help comes in the right amount or quality. If NATO members make binding security deals, the same problems as with full NATO membership could come up. If one NATO country is dragged into the war because it must support Ukraine and then gets attacked by Russia, all the other members would need to step in. Otherwise, the trust and future of NATO could be in serious danger. Problems crop up in a similar way if NATO countries send troops to help Ukraine without a solid treaty. If these forces are sent while Ukraine is still fighting, or when a shaky peace falls apart, NATO could quickly get pulled into the conflict. That might trigger Russia to attack NATO members, sparking a two-way war. The same issues arise if NATO nations send peacekeepers once fighting ends. France and Britain have openly discussed this idea. Their thinking is that these troops could act like a spark, meaning that if fighting flares up again, the countries that sent them and their allies would be involved immediately. If Russia makes big, long-term plans against NATO, it becomes easier said than done for the European Union and European NATO states to not only keep helping Ukraine over time, but also boost their own ability to build weapons, raise forces, and get them ready. The rising demands of these plans come at a time when it seems the United States is stepping back from its security role, while the Trump administration pressures members to take charge of their own defense. Looking ahead, European nations will need to face the gap between their declared need to stop a large-scale war with Russia and the political challenges of spending more money, working together, and keeping up that effort into the future. Speaking of spending, NATO allies have already done a lot. 23 out of 32 NATO members are on track to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense in 2024, as agreed at the Vilnius summit in 2023, with some even surpassing that goal. Trump has urged NATO members to raise their defense spending to 5% of GDP, which is more than what most, including the United States, currently spend. But using GDP percentage is only a rough measure. It doesn't reveal how effectively the money is spent. Budgets can be managed well or poorly, depending on what is bought and for how much. That's where the real problems begin. On the other hand, Europeans have long talked about needing strategic independence in defense, to act on their own when required. But Europe's defense industries were never built for rapid expansion or coordinated mass production. Each country handles its own buying, and about half of what they purchase comes from the United States. Still, European companies also help produce American weapons. In Europe, a handful of big multinational companies dominate production, and together with national firms, they supply many different systems that often don't match up in practice or theory. Ukraine has felt this firsthand, receiving an odd mix of weapons like something out of a video game. Since the start of the full-scale war, the European Union and its executive arm, the European Commission, have worked to ease mass production and set common standards. To boost investments, Brussels has reformed policies so funds can be spent more freely. Bloc members now aim to forge closer defense ties among EU states, non-EU NATO countries, and even other nations like Switzerland or South Korea. They are already trying this, though not in a radical way. These ideas must overcome both EU procurement rules and country-specific challenges. For example, how Cyprus uses its EU status and the bloc's unanimity rule to block defense cooperation with Ankara. They also want to keep the United States involved, partly by continuing to buy American arms, and partly by persuading the Trump team that staying committed to Europe is valuable. Balancing all these goals will not be easy for European leaders. In the past, leaning on the United States and NATO for security helped European nations avoid the hard politics of raising and keeping defense spending high. they still try to keep US involvement by buying arms and convincing the Trump administration to stay on board with Europe. But handling this balancing act remains a major challenge for European leaders. Along with trying to set safety goals among many independent nations, there's a big challenge ahead. With the United States stepping back, European Union and NATO countries must figure out how to work through their own internal fights and disagreements. Even if top leaders agree that Russia's threat is real, everyday voters might worry more about jobs and migration. They could vote for new governments with fresh ideas, leading their nations in different directions. This means that the usually united EU and NATO might struggle to push through their safety plans. Meanwhile, Europe is also busy working on its own security. For example, France is reportedly thinking about sending some Rafale fighter jets from its air force to Germany. A French official said that moving a few nuclear-capable jets wouldn't be too hard and would send a strong signal. He explained that if France places a nuclear deterrent in Germany, it could also put pressure on Britain to do the same, urging the UK to share its nuclear weapons with Germany. Although France is ready to send these jets, its aim is unique. France wants a European nuclear shield rather than one managed by NATO. These weapons work separately from NATO's nuclear plans, unlike Britain's, which are closely tied to US policies. Because of this independence, Paris has more room to negotiate on extending its nuclear protection to other European allies. France has its own set of weapons, including submarine-launched ballistic missiles and air-launched nuclear bombs built to its own design. This move signals a change in Europe's defense strategy, especially with ongoing worries about whether the US can still guarantee security and nuclear protection. France's deterrence program is thought to include about 300 nuclear weapons that can be launched from both the sea and the air. Just 2 days before Germany's federal elections, US Vice President J.D. Vance proposed pulling American troops out of Germany. Such a step would deal a huge blow to Europe's security framework and mark a big shift in strategy, affecting Germany in particular, even though France wants a European nuclear shield. It isn't simply following a NATO model. France's weapons are independent from NATO's planning, unlike those of the United Kingdom, which are closely linked with US strategies. This independence gives Paris extra flexibility when negotiating how to extend its nuclear umbrella to European allies. Once again, just before the German elections, Vance's idea of withdrawing US troops from Germany was raised, a move that would shake up the continent's security structure and signal a major change. Germany now looks to the United Kingdom and France for nuclear safety as US promises seem less certain. Under President Trump, claims emerged that America could no longer ensure European security. In the past, Germany's Christian Democrats, in Merz, often clashed with France over Paris' push for more independent European defense to protect its ties with the US. This trend shows that the European Union is quickly moving toward becoming a nuclear superpower, a goal that France has long promoted through the idea of nuclear sharing. Back in 2007, Nicolas Sarkozy, France's former president, proposed that France and Germany talk about sharing nuclear weapons. At that time, Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel turned down the idea. Then, in 2020, President Macron launched a bold plan to create a nuclear shield that was more European in style. After that, France tried several times to start nuclear talks with Germany, but nothing worked until February 2025. At that point, Merz warned that we should get ready in case Donald Trump stops fully backing NATO's promise of mutual defense. I believe Europeans must do everything they can to protect their own land. Because France and Germany have long disagreed over defense, many French politicians and officials were happy to hear Merz's warning. Germany already has its own nuclear weapons. Moreover, it, along with Turkey, Italy, the Netherlands, and Belgium, hosts U.S. nuclear arms under NATO's sharing plan. These nations store USB-61 gravity bombs at different bases. To join this program, a country must have fighter jets that can carry these bombs. Interestingly, every one of these countries except Turkey will use the F-35A Lightning II. With this setup, much of the deterrence depends on the United States. At Bochel Air Base, Germany currently keeps 20 USB-61 bombs for its Tornado jets. The base is now being upgraded for Germany's future F-35s, which will also be able to carry nuclear weapons. Although these bombs can be loaded onto German fighters, they can only be used with U.S. permission. Germany is not willing to let go of the American nuclear arms it already hosts. Still, Macron's push to make France's nuclear force more European, an idea he promoted in 2020, along with later French efforts, did not gain traction in Germany until February 2025. Merz warned that we must prepare for a time when Trump might no longer support NATO's promise to defend all its members without conditions. Germany does not want to lose its U.S. nuclear weapons. However, making France's nuclear deterrent more European could give Germany extra bargaining power with the United States. This change might reduce America's hold on Germany's security. There is no perfect fix for Europe's safety challenges. Still, the most lasting solution begins with ending the war so that Ukraine remains free and able to defend itself, while Russia thinks twice about starting more fights. These goals are more likely to be met and to last if European nations across the Atlantic become more self-reliant, even though the United States still plays a role, just a smaller one. This future will be more secure and stable if all the players start discussing how to work together and lower risks on a continent that is becoming more focused on military strength.